The Veari conclave chamber shimmered with crystalline arches that refracted light into endless colors. Beneath them, 100 delegations gathered in tiers, scales, feathers, chitin, and skin, all reflecting the alien mosaic of galactic politics. The hum of translators filled the air like a swarm of insects. To most, today was another routine gathering. To Captain Elias Rourke, it was a warning bell. He sat at the lowest tier, the human seat positioned deliberately near the exit. The placement was symbolic, a reminder that Earth's presence was tolerated, not respected. A faint sneer curled across his lips. The conclave was nothing if not theatrical. At the chamber's center, Chancellor Draxus rose. The Veari leader's scales gleamed obsidian under the lights, his long frame towering over the podium. His eyes, cold amber slits, swept across the delegates with the arrogance of one who believed he owned the room. Esteemed counselors, Draxus began, his voice carrying a subtle growl. We face supply shortages along the rim. Armies cannot be maintained without grain, fuel, and labor. The solution is simple. We assign the human colonies to this task. Their species is sturdy, their lives abundant, and their loyalty expendable. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several species clicked mandibles in agreement. Others folded wings or thumped tails. To them, humans were little more than useful bipeds, cheap, plentiful, unthreatening. Elias clenched his jaw. He waited for the translators to finish, then pressed the activation rune on his console. A halo of light marked his turn to speak. With respect, Chancellor, Elias said evenly, human colonies are not cargo farms. They are sovereign members of this conclave. To treat them as supply depots is a violation of every charter signed. A soft ripple of laughter circled the room. Azirath-Ionvu, a mass of tendrils shimmering like oil, undulated with amusement. Sovereign? Humans cling to the edges of their own star system. You mistake endurance for power. Another voice chimed in, sharp as crystal. Let them serve. It is their place. Elias steadied his breathing. He had expected this. The prejudice wasn't new. But hearing Draxus voice it as policy, not just opinion, shifted the danger into reality. Draxus leaned forward, talons tapping the podium. Captain Rourke, no offense is meant. But let us be practical. Humans have no fleets to rival ours, no armies to withstand invasion. What they do have is bodies, and bodies are what the Rim requires. The words were delivered with surgical cruelty. Elias kept his face impassive. Inside, an old memory stirred, history lessons buried deep, stories not meant to be shared in alien halls. Earth's wars, its endless cycles of conflict, had always been sanitized in galactic archives. Other species spoke of human curiosity, adaptability, even diplomacy. Few knew the truth of Verdun, Stalingrad, or the Pacific. Few had read of trenches filled with mud and blood, of cities rebuilt from ashes. Those warnings were forgotten, or hidden. Perhaps intentionally. He let silence linger a heartbeat too long. Then he answered, his tone calm but laced with steel. It is unwise to underestimate us. Humanity has endured more than you imagine. Draxus's grin revealed rows of sharp teeth. Empty words. Endurance is not power. The chamber erupted into overlapping chatter. Delegates debated quotas, troop movements, trade routes, as though humans were resources already claimed. Elias sat back, letting the noise wash over him. He studied faces instead of arguments, the twitch of Azuran's wings, the flick of a Karol's tongue. Most were indifferent. A few looked uneasy. One or two avoided his gaze entirely. He understood then. This wasn't careless arrogance. It was orchestration. Draxus wanted humanity boxed into servitude before they had the chance to rise. And the conclave, blinded by centuries of assuming superiority, would let it happen. A voice whispered at his shoulder. It was Ambassador Naima Ashford, Earth's senior diplomat. Her features were calm, but her fingers drummed the table in restrained fury. We can't win this fight here, she murmured. They'll outvote us. Elias nodded. Then the fight moves elsewhere. Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp and knowing. You're thinking of the archives. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The session dragged for hours. Decrees were passed. Quotas assigned. By the time the chamber emptied, the human delegation had been formally designated as auxiliary providers, a polite term for slaves. Elias walked the crystalline corridors in silence until the crowds thinned. Only then did his mask crack. His fist slammed against the wall, echoing down the passage. Damn them, he muttered. They think we're cattle. Naima caught up, her steps brisk. Because they don't know. Or they've forgotten. Elias's gaze hardened. Then it's time they remember. They reached the docking bay. The human frigate Resolute awaited, its hull scarred from long patrols along pirate routes. Elias paused at the airlock. For a moment he allowed himself to breathe, to feel the weight of what lay ahead. The galaxy had decided humanity's role. But humanity had never been good at following scripts. Inside the frigate, the crew rose as he entered. Faces turned to him with unspoken questions. He met their eyes one by one. Young officers from Luna. Veterans from the Belt. Colonists who had traded farms for rifles. They were tired of being dismissed. Elias stepped onto the command dais. His voice carried across the deck, quiet but sharp. The Conclave sees us as expendable. They think we will break. They are wrong. From this day, we prepare, not to beg, not to serve, but to stand. And when the time comes, we'll remind them who we are. The silence that followed was electric. Then, one by one, voices answered. Aye, Captain. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and indifferent. But Elias knew the truth buried in human history: indifference never stopped them before. The Resolute slipped through the void like a predator holding its breath. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with a tension the crew hadn't felt before. Orders were carried out in silence, eyes fixed on Elias Rourke as though he carried the weight of Earth itself on his shoulders. Elias stood in the briefing chamber, a circular room with a holographic map of human colonies flickering in the center. Green dots marked agricultural worlds, mining stations, and trade hubs. Red sigils pulsed along the frontier, conclave deployments, ships stationed nearby to oversee humanity's contribution. The implication was clear: resistance would be met with force. Ambassador Naima Ashford leaned over the display. Her normally composed expression was tight, her voice clipped. They've moved faster than we expected. Draxus already has garrisons orbiting Calypsis and Hespera. Within weeks they'll strip them bare. Families will be drafted into labor camps. Murmurs spread among the gathered officers. Commander Leon Ortega, head of security, slammed a fist on the table. And the Conclave expects us to comply? To hand over our people like cargo? Elias lifted a hand, steadying the room. That is exactly what they expect. Because they believe we have no choice. He gestured at the map, voice steady. But they don't understand us. They've seen colonies, not Earth. They've seen trade ships, not Verdun, not Kursk, not the siege of Shanghai. They have no memory of what it means when humanity refuses to yield. The officers leaned in, tension transforming into something sharper: resolve. Naima's eyes narrowed. You're proposing defiance. But defiance without preparation is suicide. Elias activated a secondary feed. The map shifted to reveal encrypted archive fragments, classified Earth war records that most colonists had never read, suppressed to prevent fear among the Conclave. The images were stark: ruined cities rebuilt, soldiers pushing through endless mud, fleets rising from ashes. This is our inheritance, Elias said softly. The galaxy forgot. Maybe we wanted them to forget. But if we don't show them now, humanity will vanish into servitude. A silence hung, broken finally by Ortega's sharp nod. Then we fight. The declaration set the tone. The meeting shifted from despair to strategy. Elias outlined his plan: not open war, that would be suicide, but calculated resistance. Guerrilla strikes, propaganda, and controlled escalation to force the Conclave to recognize humanity as more than pawns. We hit supply chains first, Elias explained. Target their logistics, not their warships. Make their occupation costly, drag them into battles they can't predict. And every victory, no matter how small, we broadcast across the conclave. They need to see what humans become when pushed. Lieutenant Arun Dev, young but sharp-eyed, hesitated. Captain, won't this provoke annihilation? Elias met his gaze. It might. But submission guarantees it. The words sank in. Choices were narrowing, and the crew knew it. Within days, sparks of defiance ignited. On Calypsis, a farming colony, Veari troops landed to seize grain. They expected frightened settlers. Instead, militia farmers ambushed their patrols, using terrain and weather to scatter them. Video of the skirmish spread through underground channels, humans fighting with shovels, rifles, and unyielding will. On Hespera, miners refused to load or into alien transports. When forced, they sabotaged equipment, rigging explosives that crippled Veari cargo haulers. No fleet could guard every crate, every shipment. Every act carried Elias's fingerprints, coordinated through encrypted relays, tied together by the vision of resistance. The galaxy began to whisper. Delegates who once mocked humans found themselves watching uneasy reports. In the Resolute's command deck, Elias reviewed transmissions. The footage was grainy, desperate, but powerful. Each act was the seed of a larger fire. Ortega approached, arms folded. They'll retaliate hard. Draxus won't tolerate this long. Good, Elias replied. Let him overreach. The more brutal his hand, the more the galaxy will see what he fears. Naima joined them, her tone sharp. We are gambling with lives, Captain. Every colony we push into rebellion will bleed. Elias turned, his gaze unwavering. They're bleeding already. The question is whether they bleed in silence, or bleed and rise. Her silence was answer enough. The first direct confrontation came at the colony of Celes Prime. Draxus dispatched a small fleet to restore order, expecting compliance. Instead, human patrol craft swarmed them, too agile for the lumbering alien cruisers. Elias himself led the charge. In the Resolute's cockpit, alarms blared as the ship darted between plasma volleys. He barked commands, voice calm under fire. Ortega, on my mark, disrupt their comms. Aye, Captain. A flash lit the void as the jamming array unleashed, scrambling enemy signals. Confused, the alien ships broke formation. Human fighters struck like knives, crippling engines and severing supplied barges. They didn't seek destruction, they sought humiliation. When the dust cleared, the Veari fleet limped back, beaten not by numbers but by audacity. Cheers erupted across Celes Prime, transmitted across human channels. The galaxy saw something they hadn't expected, humans not begging for mercy, but daring to fight. Back in the conclave chambers, Draxus fumed. Reports of defiance landed one after another, each dripping with the humiliation of a species he had dismissed. His claws dug grooves into the podium as he addressed the council. They must be eradicated before this infection spreads. Humanity cannot be allowed to defy us. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. One murmured, they were meant to be workers, not warriors. Draxus's amber eyes flared. Then we remind them of their place. But unease had already begun to spread. Seeds of doubt had been planted, watered by human defiance. On the Resolute, Elias stood alone at the viewport, stars stretched into infinity. For a moment, the weight pressed heavy on him, the knowledge that every decision risked thousands of lives. Naima entered quietly, her voice low. You've lit the fire. But fires don't stay contained. If Draxus escalates... Elias didn't look at her. Then the galaxy will finally see. They'll see why we were meant to be feared. He spoke not with arrogance, but with the certainty of a man who knew history was repeating itself. Humanity had been underestimated before. It always ended the same way. The Veari fleet returned to Celes Prime battered, engines sputtering, hulls scarred from human strikes. In the conclave chamber, Chancellor Draxus faced the council with a forced calm. His scaled hands gripped the podium, claws faintly clicking against the crystal surface. Is this what we allow? he demanded, voice rippling with restrained fury. Humans, farmers, miners, merchants, daring to resist fleets that should crush them without effort. Their defiance grows because we permit it. A murmur spread. Delegates shifted in unease. Some nodded, others looked away. The arrogance that once colored their laughter had begun to fray. Councillor Vaith of the Zirin swarm raised a segmented arm. Perhaps they are not as fragile as believed. Draxus's glare silenced him. They are nothing. Their victories are illusions, tricks of desperation. But illusions, if left unchecked, inspire rebellion. He leaned closer, amber eyes narrowing. We will make an example. Cella's prime will burn. On the Resolute, Elias Rourke listened to intercepted transmissions. The decision was clear: Draxus would escalate. He turned to Ortega and Naima in the briefing chamber. They'll strike Cella's prime with overwhelming force, Elias said. Not to reclaim it. To erase it. Naima's face tightened. If they annihilate a colony, the Conclave might condemn Draxus. But the cost? Elias shook his head. The Conclave will condemn nothing. They fear him too much. If we wait, Cella's prime dies. We need to act before the fleet arrives. Ortega crossed his arms. We're outnumbered. Even with our militia craft, they'll bury us. Elias tapped the map, highlighting narrow asteroid fields near Cella's prime's orbit. Outnumbered doesn't mean outplayed. We force them into terrain where numbers are useless. We show them what it means to fight humans on human terms. Ortega studied the map, a grin breaking through his grimness. Ambush. Ambush, Elias confirmed. The asteroid belt shimmered like a jagged wall of knives. Veari cruisers advanced, shields blazing, their commanders certain the humans would scatter. Inside the Resolute, the crew held their breath. Every system hummed at peak, weapons charged, engines barely pulsing to avoid detection. Hold, Elias whispered. His eyes tracked the enemy formations. Hold. The Veari fleet entered the kill zone. Now. The asteroid field erupted. Hidden human craft surged from cover, striking engines and weapon ports. The Resolute spun from shadow, its cannons raking fire across the lead cruiser. Explosions bloomed, fragments scattering into the void. On the alien bridge, chaos reigned. A Veari officer shouted, "They're everywhere! Small ships, too fast to track." Another hissed, "This is impossible. Primitive vessels shouldn't." A blast cut his words short. Elias's voice remained steady amid the storm. "Keep them off balance. Don't seek destruction, seek humiliation." The battle became a dance of shadows. Human craft darted through asteroids, using debris as shields. The Veari, unused to irregular tactics, faltered. Ships collided, formations broke. By the time reinforcements pulled back, 3 cruisers were disabled, dozens of supply ships lost. Cella's prime was spared. Cheers erupted across human channels. Colonists sent frantic messages of gratitude, voices trembling with both relief and disbelief. But Elias allowed no celebration on the Resolute. He stood in the war room, eyes fixed on the holomap. "This wasn't victory," he said quietly. "This was revelation. Draxus now understands we are not what he thought." Naima approached, concern shadowing her face. "He'll come harder. He has to, or the Conclave will see weakness." Elias nodded. "Then let him. Every blow he strikes reveals his fear." Word spread fast. Across the Conclave, reports of the ambush sparked unease. Delegates whispered in corridors, voices low. A Veari merchant muttered to a Kyril diplomat, "They fight like no other. No retreat, no surrender." The Kyril's tongue flicked nervously. "What else have we been told that isn't true?" The myth of human fragility had cracked. In his private chamber, Draxus raged. He hurled data tablets against the wall, each shattering into sparks. Advisors stood silent, afraid to speak. Finally, Draxus turned, voice venomous. "They dare humiliate me. Me. If the Conclave doubts my strength, my throne will fracture. Humanity must not be tolerated." They must be eradicated. He fixed his gaze on the stars beyond the viewport. Prepare the purge. We end them now. Meanwhile, Elias sought allies. In the dim-lit back halls of the Conclave Station, he met with Counselor Syrah of the Luthery, a species known for neutrality. Her luminous eyes regarded him with quiet curiosity. You ask much, she said. For us to oppose Draxus openly is to risk ruin. Elias leaned forward, voice low but edged. You've seen the reports. You know what we are. Draxus wants you to believe humanity is nothing. But ask yourself, why fear us so much if that's true? Syrah hesitated, her gaze flickering. Because fear is not always rational. Or because it is ancient. Elias pressed. The archives are not wrong. Somewhere in your own history you must have read what humans are capable of. That's why he wants us erased before the truth spreads. Her silence stretched, but Elias saw the doubt growing in her. Back aboard the Resolute, the crew gathered for a rare moment of calm. Ortega slumped into a chair, exhaustion painted across his face. We've bought time. Nothing more. Naima sipped from a cup, her voice soft. Time can mean everything. Elias stood by the viewport, watching the stars wheel slowly. His thoughts drifted not to the battles, but to Earth, oceans stretching under blue skies, cities alive with music and laughter. Humanity had always carried both creation and destruction in its bones. The galaxy had seen only the surface. Now, it was learning the depth. He turned back, voice calm but resolute. Draxus will come. He'll gather his armadas, unleash his fury. Let him. Every strike only proves the truth he fears. Naima frowned. And what truth is that? That humanity doesn't break, Elias said. His tone was quiet, but the steel in it carried across the room. Outside, the void was silent. But everyone aboard the Resolute felt it. The storm was coming. And when it broke, no one in the galaxy would ever see humans the same way again. The Veari Armada emerged from slip space like a storm of steel. Dozens of cruisers, heavy carriers, and a dreadnought bristling with weapons blotted out Celes Prime's sky. Every sensor on the Resolute flared red. On the command deck, silence reigned. Officers stared at the display, faces pale. Commander Ortega muttered under his breath. God help us! Elias Rourke stood steady, hands clasped behind his back. His voice cut through the tension. They brought their whole arsenal. That means Draxus is desperate. Ambassador Naima's jaw tightened. Or determined. Elias turned toward her. Desperation masquerades as determination. He needs this to end today. That's what gives us a chance. The strategy had been laid out days before. Humanity could not meet the Conclave in open battle. But they didn't need to. They needed only to hold long enough for the galaxy to watch. Broadcast channels active? Elias asked. Aye, Captain, a comms officer replied. Every frequency. They'll see everything. Elias nodded. Then let's show them. The first wave of Veari fighters swept in, engines shrieking. Human patrol craft rose to meet them, darting like gnats around leviathans. Dogfights ignited across Celes Prime's orbit, streaks of fire tracing the void. On the bridge of the dreadnought, Draxus leaned forward, eyes alight with hunger. Crush them. No survivors. But the fight didn't unfold as he expected. The Resolute dove into the fray, weaving between asteroids, striking where shields were weakest. Human ships didn't fight for territory, they fought to inflict doubt. Every crippled cruiser, every lost supply ship was another crack in the illusion of Veari dominance. Inside the command deck, Ortega barked orders, sweat streaking his brow. 2 more on our tail, cut engines! The Resolute lurched, dropping speed. Enemy fire overshot. The human gunners fired in unison, shredding their pursuers. The deck erupted in cheers, but Elias raised a hand. Stay sharp. This isn't won yet. The battle dragged on. Human ships fell, one after another, but each loss carried a price. Pilots rammed crippled fighters into enemy hulls, detonating charges at point-blank range. Colonists launched shuttles filled with scrap metal and explosives, turning them into guided bombs. Even civilian freighters joined, slamming their bulk into Veari troop carriers. Draxus watched with growing unease. His claws drummed against the armrest. "Why don't they break?" An aide trembled. "Chancellor, their tactics defy prediction. They fight as if they expect to die. They fight as if they intend to win," Draxus snapped. Elias stood at the center of the Resolute's bridge, eyes fixed on the holomap. Red markers still outnumbered green, but the pattern was shifting. The Veari armada wasn't pressing forward, it was staggering. He turned to Naima. "Open channel to all ships." Her nod sent his voice across the human fleet. "Brothers, sisters. Today they think to erase us. Remember this, every strike we land, every moment we endure, is proof to the galaxy. We are not pawns. We are not expendable. We are human, and we do not yield." The channel crackled with voices rising as one. "We do not yield!" The final act came as Draxus pushed his dreadnought forward, determined to crush resistance personally. Its cannons lit the void, carving through debris, tearing human ships apart. Elias saw the trajectory and knew the risk. He leaned close to Ortega. "Prepare ramming run." The commander's eyes widened. "That's suicide." Elias's tone was iron. "It's history. How many times have our ancestors thrown themselves into the fire so others could live? This is no different." Naima gripped his arm. "You'll die. Only if it ends here. But if this is remembered, we'll never die." The Resolute accelerated, engines howling. Enemy fire pounded the hull, tearing metal away, but the ship drove on, straight toward the dreadnought's command section. Draxus rose from his throne, disbelief flashing across his reptilian features. "They're charging us? They'll be vaporized." But Elias had calculated every second. At the last moment, he triggered the detonators hidden across the Resolute's auxiliary bays, mines scavenged from battlefields, welded into the hull. The explosion ripped through the dreadnought's flank, tearing shields apart, gutting its central reactor. Light engulfed the void. When the blast cleared, the dreadnought drifted in ruin. Draxus's flagship, symbol of Veari supremacy, was crippled before the eyes of the galaxy. On the bridge of a neutral Lutheri vessel, Counselor Syrah watched in stunned silence. Around her, aides whispered in disbelief. "They should not have survived. No species fights like this." Syrah murmured, almost to herself. "No one told us. No one told us what they truly were." The remnants of the Veari fleet withdrew. Celis Prime still stood. Human ships floated battered, many destroyed, but their resistance had broken the illusion of weakness forever. Elias stood amid smoke and sparks on the shattered Resolute's bridge. His uniform was torn, blood streaking his forehead, but his voice remained steady. "Signal to the conclave, humanity is no one's servant. We are equals, or we are enemies." Naima placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes shining. "They'll hear you. They'll have no choice." Across the galaxy, the message spread. Delegates who once mocked humanity now spoke of them with awe and fear. Reports painted the same picture, a species that refused surrender, that turned desperation into defiance, that fought as if survival was not a question but a certainty. In the ruins of his dreadnought, Chancellor Draxus lay silent, the weight of his arrogance crushing him as surely as the blast. That night, aboard what remained of the Resolute, Elias stood at the viewport, stars burning beyond the wreckage. Ortega limped to his side. "We lost so many." Elias's gaze didn't waver. "We showed the galaxy the truth. Loss was always the price." Naima joined them, voice quiet but resolute. "And now?" Elias's eyes hardened. "Now they'll never forget. Because no one told them about humans, until it was too late." The stars shimmered, silent witnesses to a new chapter in galactic history.